Hi friends, write in the comments what city you are from. Perhaps you also had similar stories. It is very interesting to know what happened in your corner of the world. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like it, share your thoughts or stories in the comments, and subscribe to the channel. There are more exciting and unexpected stories ahead. All characters and events described in this story are fictitious. Any resemblance to real people or events is purely coincidental. Do not judge strictly. Los Angeles was waking up slowly, as if the city knew that morning was its best time. The sun was lazily spreading over the hills, painting the glass facades of Santa Monica, a golden pink, soft, almost neon, like a filter with a slight gradient. The sky over the ocean was almost unrealistically clear, a shade between lavender and peach, the kind that only happens in the morning hours, before the city has had time to settle into its usual bustle. On the terrace of a modern mansion with picture windows perched above a cliff, Mia Harper adjusted her perfectly coiffed waves, checking each strand as if the shot were not just a job, but a statement of her aesthetic. Her ivory satin robe fell just off her shoulders, revealing a thin chain with a sun pendant, a symbol she'd worn since their at Maya Angel's account went viral after their trip to Bali together. Her iPhone 13 Pro was set to cinematic mode on a tripod. A drone hummed quietly nearby, hovering like a loyal dog awaiting her command. Its lens tracked the fluid movement of her body and the surrounding area, preparing to capture the perfect panorama. Mia against the serene Pacific Ocean, palm trees swaying gently in the morning breeze, and a glass bowl of sliced mango and passion fruit on a marble table. It was all part of their brand couple of goals: the perfect life, the perfect love, the perfect shot. Together they built not just an image, but a lifestyle universe, curated, filtered, but at the same time attractive and alive. It was Mia who appeared in the frame, most often refined, light, with endlessly long legs, and a look that seemed to have come straight from the cover. Of Fogesh knew how to work the camera in such a way that even the movement of her fingers seemed part of a well-thought-out script. "Ethan, honey, can you move a little to the left?" Mia's voice was as sweet as the pink strawberry coconut smoothie she held in her graceful hand, immaculately manicured in milky peach. "The light is hitting your stubble, and we haven't agreed on Galetti about sponsorship." Ethan, tall, with dark hair slightly disheveled from his morning run, rolled his eyes but obediently stepped aside. His logo t-shirt space slightly crumpled on his shoulder, but that only added to his charm, a startup guy who wasn't afraid to be real. He adjusted his thin-framed glasses, which Mia called her smart sex look, and grinned with that lazy confidence that always looked great on camera. "I hope you're not planning on asking me to shave on live TV," he muttered, but he stood as befitted the boyfriend of an influencer with 500,000 followers, at the right angle, with his shoulders slightly tense, in a pose that made it seem like he just happened to be in the frame, rather than having spent 20 minutes under a softbox. Mia giggled softly, the sound less spontaneous than deliberate, clear and light, like the background of a summer vlog. Her face turned toward the camera lens, and at that very moment the light caught her cheekbone, catching a glint on her highlighter. She took a sip of her smoothie, tilted her head slightly to the right, and at that moment the drone, as if sensing her mood change, began a smooth flight, filming a panorama from above the terrace, morning Los Angeles, the ocean in the distance, her and Ethan, the perfect relationship capsule in the age of social media. But beneath the veneer, there was tension, as subtle as a crack in a marble tile. Ethan had a new app launch in a week, and he hadn't slept well for 3 nights. And Mia was nervous about the algorithm Reels, a collaboration with a sportswear brand, had somehow gotten half as many views as expected. None of this was said out loud, but it hung in the air like the faint scent of a lavender diffuser. Pleasant, but a little heavy on the temples. "Okay, now we'll shoot the last scene, and you're free," she said, quickly scrolling through the footage on her phone screen. "By the way, tomorrow is the meeting with Santel Mason. You need to wear that linen they gave you." "Sure, boss," Ethan nodded, winking, but the corner of his lips twitched slightly. "Maybe I should just shave, then I won't have to move around like a puppet." His tone was light, but there was a hint of irritation in it. Mia caught it, but only smiled wider, as if the camera could catch her inner sigh. "No, the beard is your brand," she winked, lifting the smoothie to her lips and taking a sip that was perfectly timed for the shot. "Plus, your followers love it when you're like this, brutal techie." Ethan snorted, but struck a pose anyway, one hand in his jean pocket, the other casually holding a glass of matcha latte. The drone rose smoothly, capturing them both in the frame. Mia in a white crop top and baggy linen pants, Ethan in his signature New Balance sneakers. They looked like they'd stepped off the cover of a health magazine, or more likely, off the screen of TikTok, where their reels were racking up millions of views. "Okay, 3, 2, 1. Mia snapped her fingers and the drone began recording. She turned to the camera, her smile shining like the Hollywood sign in the hills. "Good morning, my sunshines. This is Mia and Ethan, your hash couple of goals, and today we're starting the day with our favorite morning routine. Smoothies, sunshine, and a little love. What could be better?" Ethan played along, raising his glass in a toast. "To love and caffeine," he added, and his voice sounded so sincere that even Mia believed their own fairy tale for a second. The camera turned off, the drone landed softly on the terrace. Mia immediately grabbed her phone to check the footage. Her fingers quickly scrolled through the frames, her eyes squinted, assessing every corner, every shadow. "We need to reshoot it," she finally said, without looking up from the screen. "Your glass was tilted slightly, and it looks unnatural." Ethan set his matcha latte on the glass table and crossed his arms. "Mia, it's a smoothie." No one looks at the angle of the glass. People scroll through their feed in 2 seconds. "People notice everything," she snapped, her voice sharpening slightly, but she softened it quickly, adding, "That's our brand, Ethan. We sell a dream, and a dream has to be perfect." He looked at her perfectly painted eyelashes, at her perfectly filtered reality, and something in his gaze flickered. But he just shrugged. "Okay, we'll reshoot. But then I'm going to the office. We have a pitch to investors today, and I can't spend the whole day posing for reels." Mia nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. She knew the pitch was important. Ethan was working on his startup, a money management app that promised to be the next Robinhood, as he liked to say. But her own startup, their shared social media brand, was just as time-consuming and labor-intensive, and frankly, more lucrative. Sponsorship deals with yogurt brands, athletic apparel, and even eco-friendly straws were pouring in. But Ethan never said it directly. He just stayed silent when she showed him the numbers, and that silence was starting to bother her. "Okay, let's do it again," she said, returning the phone to its stand. "And smile, please. You look like you just got a mortgage bill." Ethan laughed, but it was strained. "Maybe because I actually got it," he winked, but there was a hint of weariness in his eyes. They reshooted the video twice more until Mia was satisfied. When the drone finally flew off to its charging station and the camera was stowed away, Mia plopped down on a lounge chair by the pool. She opened Instagram and began editing the video, adding filters and choosing music. Meanwhile, Ethan went inside to get ready for the office. She could hear him jingling his keys and muttering something about traffic on the 405. "Hey," she called, still glued to her phone. "Are you coming back for dinner? I made a deal with that vegan burger company. They want us to do a reel together." Ethan appeared in the doorway, already wearing a jacket, with a backpack over his shoulder. His face was calm, but something about it made Mia put her phone down. "I'm not sure," he said. "The pitch might take a while, and we have a team meeting later. Maybe we can order something when I get back." "Late again?" Mia raised an eyebrow, her voice light, but with a hint of tension. "It's like you've been living in that office lately." Ethan shrugged, his smile a little forced. "Startups, you know, don't sleep until they take off." "Or they won't collapse," she added, and it sounded harsher than she intended. He looked at her for a long moment, and for a second Mia thought he wanted to say something. But he just nodded. "See you tonight," he said and walked out, slamming the door a little harder than necessary. Mia was left alone on the terrace. She looked at her smoothie, already starting to separate, and at her phone, where the video was still waiting for the finishing touches. She added the caption, "Morning with my love couple goals lalev." But as she posted, she felt something tighten in her chest. It wasn't just the irritation of reshoots or the fatigue of endless editing. It was something deeper, something she didn't want to name out loud. She opened a chat with her friend Caitlin, who worked as a stylist and always knew how to lighten the mood. "Kate, are you free today? We need to grab coffee and chat. I feel like I'm playing on someone else's reel." The answer came almost immediately. "Uo drama. Meet me at Earth Cafe in an hour. Tell me what's that shadow on your couple goals." Mia smiled, but it quickly faded. She looked out at the ocean, at the perfect landscape that had been their backdrop for 2 years. Everything looked perfect. But why did it feel like something was falling apart? She arrived at Earth Cafe on Melrose, where Caitlin was already sitting, sipping a matcha latte with a perfectly heart-shaped foam top. Caitlin was wearing oversized jeans and a bright yellow t-shirt that read "Vibes Only." Her dark hair was pulled back into a messy bun, and her oversized sunglasses took up half her face. "Okay, babe, spit it out," Caitlin began as soon as Mia sat down across from her. "What's our Insta Queen's crisis?" Mia sighed, ordering herself an iced coffee with almond milk. "Not a crisis. It's just, I don't know. Ethan's been weird lately. Always in the office, always busy, and when I try to talk about it, he laughs it off or withdraws into himself." Caitlin squinted, removing her glasses. Sounds like he's hiding something, or someone." "Kate, don't start." Mia rolled her eyes, but her voice wavered. "He's not like that. He's just under pressure. The startup, the investors, all of it."
Yeah, and you're under pressure from followers and sponsors, but you still manage to take off your reels and look like you just came out of the spa. Caitlin leaned closer. "Look, I'm not saying he's cheating, but you know how it is. Los Angeles, startups, parties in Westwood, lots of temptations."
Mia shook her head, but Caitlin's words had stung more than she cared to admit. She remembered how Ethan had been staying late lately at team meetings, how his phone would occasionally flash notifications that he'd quickly dismiss. She'd always trusted him. They were couple goals, damn it. But what if Caitlin was right? "I'm just tired," she said finally, looking into her coffee. "Tired of pretending everything is perfect. Tired of the cameras, the drones, this illusion." Caitlin placed her hand on hers. "Then maybe it's time to take the filter off. Not from photos, but from life. Talk to it. Straight up, without all this Instagram stuff." Mia nodded, but deep down she knew that talking to Ethan would be harder than any reel. Because the truth, unlike their posts, couldn't be edited. The downtown Los Angeles studio was buzzing. White walls covered with huge black and white photographs of models in dramatic poses reflected the spotlights, casting a warm glow over the space. In the corner was a makeup room, mirrors strewn with light bulbs, tables piled high with brushes, eyeshadow palettes, and lipstick tubes. Alex Turner of the Arctic Monkeys' raspy voice blared from the speakers, setting the pace for the shoot. Mia Harper stood in front of a giant mirror while makeup artist Leela applied bronzer, highlighting cheekbones that she described as like they could cut glass. Mia adjusted the black Reformation dress she'd chosen for today's content, the form-fitting, low-cut back. Her hair was swept into loose waves, brushing her shoulders. She glanced at her reflection and smiled, but it was more professional than genuine. 2 days had passed since her conversation with Caitlin at Earth Cafe, and her friend's words were still swirling around in her head. "Take the filter off your life." But instead, Mia decided to add even more filters, professional ones this time, which was why she'd hired Lucas Santos, a photographer whose work had appeared in Vogue and on billboards all over the city. If her couple goals were starting to come apart at the seams, she'd at least make it look epic. "Ready to shine, queen?" Leela put down her brush and stepped back, admiring her work. "You look like you just stepped out of a Beyoncé video." Mia laughed, adjusting her hoop earrings. "I hope Luca appreciates this. I need content that will break the feed. Oh, with Luca, it's guaranteed, Leela winked, lowering her voice. Just keep a tight rein on yourself, girl. Well, you'll see. Mia raised an eyebrow, but before she could respond, Lucas Santos walked into the studio, and the air seemed to thicken, become denser, more intense like before a thunderstorm. He never entered, he appeared, as if the stage was waiting for him. And today was no exception. He was in his early 30s, but he had the kind of charisma that doesn't require age to weigh. Dark stubble accentuated his sharp cheekbones, and his hair was carelessly styled as if it deliberately contradicted the perfect clarity of his photographs. Tattoos, abstractions, words in Portuguese, thin lines and silhouettes peeked out from under the rolled-up sleeves of a black shirt in which he always looked as if he had just returned from a private screening in Berlin. Cameron Z9 hung around his neck like a medallion or a weapon. Luck had an almost mystical ability to turn any lens into an extension of his personality. His walk, relaxed but precise, resembled the steps of a man who knows he is needed, regardless of whether he says a word. He glanced around the room. The lights, the equipment, the tastefully arranged chairs, the crew, each busy with their own task, but everything froze slightly for a second. Ethan tensed, subtly, imperceptibly to the eye, but Mia caught it, like she senses the temperature of water at first touch. Luca's eyes landed on her, softly, almost by accident. Almost. His gaze slid over her body, not as an object, but as a line of the frame, paying attention to light, balance, mood. The corners of his lips twitched in a slight, almost predatory smile, and in that fleeting half-smile there was everything. Memory, challenge, admiration. Mia Harper, he said, drawing out the vowels as if he were tasting her name. I saw your reels. Not bad. But you know, the camera loves those who aren't afraid to show more. His voice was low, with a slight accent either Brazilian or Portuguese. Mia couldn't quite tell. She crossed her arms, trying not to show how hurt she was by the not bad. More, she tilted her head, her tone playful but challenging. I thought 1,000,000 likes was more. Luca laughed, coming closer. He stopped a few feet away from her, and Mia caught a whiff of his cologne, something woody, with a hint of citrus. He took the camera off his neck and started checking the settings, but his eyes kept returning to her. Likes are one thing, he said, not looking away from the camera. But getting people to stop scrolling, that's an art. Ready to give it a try? Mia felt her pulse quicken. There was something about the way he spoke casual, but with a hint of something more that made her feel both vulnerable and intrigued. She nodded, looking away. Show me how it's done. Luca snapped his fingers, and the assistants began to bustle about. One adjusted the spotlight, another moved the white backdrop. The music changed to the black keys, a heavy, pulsating beat that was perfect for the shoot. Luca pointed to the center of the studio, where a high chair had already been set up, surrounded by a ring light. Let's start with something simple, he said, raising the camera. Sit down. Cross your legs. Look into the lens, but think about something forbidden. Mia chuckled, but sat down obediently, crossing her legs so that her dress rode up slightly, revealing her thigh. She looked straight into the camera, her lips parted, and a thought of Ethan flashed through her mind, his tired eyes, his excuses about meeting the team. Forbidden? Oh, there were so many things she could think of. That's it. Luca's voice became quieter, almost intimate. Don't just look. Give me emotion. Give me a secret. The camera clicked, the spotlights warmed her skin, and the rock and roll from the speakers seemed to set the rhythm of her breathing. Mia leaned forward slightly, her hair falling over one shoulder, and she caught Luca's gaze over the lens. For a second, time slowed down, like those slow-mo shots she loved so much in her reels. His eyes, dark and attentive, lingered on her a little longer than necessary. Damn, that's fire, he muttered, lowering the camera. You know how to hook. Mia smiled, but something inside her tensed. It wasn't just a compliment. It was an admission that she could still be desirable, not just to her followers, but to someone who saw her without filters. She stood up, adjusting her dress, and walked over to Luca to look at the pictures. "Show me," she said, leaning toward the camera screen. Their shoulders almost touched, and she felt the warmth of his body. Luca scrolled through the frames, and Mia couldn't help but admit he was good. Each picture was alive, with some inexplicable energy. She looked not just beautiful, but dangerous. "Not bad, huh?" He turned to her, his face so close she could see the light stubble on his chin. "But I think we can go deeper. Want to try something less staged?" Mia narrowed her eyes, catching the hint in his tone. "Deeper," she repeated the word, adding a slight mockery. "Does this mean I have to turn my soul inside out now?" Luca smirked, his gaze flicking over her lips before returning to her eyes. "Soul is a strong word, but you know, the camera sees everything, especially what you try to hide." Her heart skipped a beat. She wanted to laugh it off, but something in his words hurt her. She had been hiding a lot of things, doubts, fatigue, questions about Ethan. But now, under that gaze, she felt exposed. "Okay," she said, taking a step back to regain control. "Let's try this. What do you want?" Luca pointed to the corner of the studio, where an old leather couch stood, bathed in soft light from the window. "Lie down there. Relax. Imagine you're alone. No one's watching. Just you and your thoughts." Mia nodded, feeling the tension build. She lay down on the couch, her arm under her head, her dress sliding up a bit, revealing more skin. Luca came closer, dropping to one knee to get the right angle. His camera was clicking again, but now he gave little direction, just watched. And that silence, that look, was louder than any words. "What do you see?" she asked, her voice quieter than she expected. "When you look at me like that." Luca lowered the camera, his eyes meeting hers. "A woman who knows what she wants, but is afraid to admit it to herself." Mia swallowed, not looking away. She wanted to tell him he was wrong, that she was in control of everything, her brand, her life, her marriage. But instead, she just smiled, a small, almost sad smile. "Take it off," she said, "before I change my mind." He nodded, and the footage continued. The music changed to something slower, with a deep bass, and each shot became more revealing. Mia moved around the couch, changing positions, but her thoughts weren't on the camera. She was thinking about how long it had been since she'd felt so visible. Ethan was looking at her, but was he seeing her? Or was he just seeing their brand, their hash couple goals? When the shoot was over, the studio began to empty. Assistants were putting away equipment. Leela went to answer a phone call. Luca and Anna stayed by the sofa, looking through the last shots. He showed her a picture of her, with half-open lips, looking off into the distance, her eyes full of something elusive. "It's you," he said, she whispered, looking at the photo. "About the secret." Luca smiled, but this time there was less play in his gaze. "Maybe I was just telling the truth." Mia felt her cheeks heat up. She wanted to say something, but her phone vibrated on the table. A message from Ethan: "Going to be late. Don't wait until dinner." She looked at the screen and something in her tightened. She turned off the phone and turned to Luca. "Thanks for today," she said, trying to sound casual. "It was awesome." "Cool?" He raised an eyebrow, stepping closer. "I thought we did something more than just cool." Her pulse quickened again. She knew she should leave, that this flirting, these looks, was too much. But instead she said, "Maybe next time we can do something even more epic." Luca laughed, his voice low and warm. "Careful, Mia. I can take that as a challenge." She smiled, grabbed her bag, and walked out of the studio, feeling his eyes follow her to the door. Outside, Los Angeles was hot and noisy, but inside, she felt cold. She knew she had crossed a line, not physically, but emotionally, and it scared her more than she cared to admit. Midnight in Los Angeles wasn't all that dark. The city was aglow with neon signs, headlights, and smartphone screens, even after most of its residents were asleep. Ethan Harper parked his Tesla Model 3 outside their Santa Monica home, turned off the engine, and paused for a moment, staring at the dark windows. The silence of the car, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioner, was the only calm moment of the day. The pitch to investors had dragged on. Then there was a developer meeting, then another and another. His startup, an AI-powered money management app, was on the brink of a big leap or a big failure. Ethan wasn't sure yet which would come of it. He pulled the backpack out of the back seat, his shoulders aching from the strain. Inside was his MacBook, an external SSD with backups of his code, and a couple empty Red Bull cans evidence of another 16-hour workday. He walked up the steps to the front door and punched the code into the smart lock, trying to be quiet. Mia was probably already asleep, or editing another reel. You never knew her. Inside, the house greeted him with the cool of the air conditioner and the faint scent of a coconut diffuser Mia had ordered from some eco-friendly brand. The living room was dark, with only the blue light from the TV left on standby, reflecting off the glass coffee table. Ethan dropped his backpack on the couch and headed to the kitchen to pour himself some water. His gaze slid around the room, taking in the usual details. Mia's drone charging, her tripod by the window, a couple of empty smoothie cups on the table. Everything was as usual, but something still seemed out of place. He paused, frowning. On the counter, among a scattering of charging cables and Mia's makeup bag, was her MacBook Air, its screen glowing faintly. Ethan moved closer, almost automatically. He hadn't meant to snoop, he rarely looked at her laptop, which was filled with Lightroom, Final Cut Pro, and a bunch of photo editing plugins. But a small notification in the upper right corner of the screen made him freeze. Private gallery, 3 new files uploaded. Ethan blinked, trying to process what he was seeing. The folder's name, Private Gallery, sounded not like Mia's style. She was an open book, at least when it came to her content. Everything she captured was instantly posted to Instagram, TikTok, or her Patreon for exclusive subscribers. Why would she have a private folder, and why did she have a lock emoji? He reached for the trackpad, then stopped. His fingers hovered over the laptop, as if he were afraid that one touch would reveal something he wasn't ready to know. Instead, he pulled back, feeling a slight unease brew in his chest. This was stupid, he told himself. These were probably just drafts for some sponsored post. Or maybe she was planning a surprise. Mia loved to do that kind of thing, like the time she'd made an entire reel about their anniversary, and he'd only found out about it after it was published. But something about the notification, its brevity, that damn lock emoji was nagging at him. Ethan was used to solving problems with logic. Code doesn't lie. Data doesn't lie. If there's a bug, you find it, you analyze the logs, you fix it. But this wasn't code. This was something else. He grabbed a glass of water and sat down on the couch, still glancing at his laptop. His thoughts were starting to wander. He hadn't seen much of Mia in the last few weeks. They lived in the same building, but their schedules were as divergent as 2 trains on parallel tracks. He'd leave for the office before dawn and come back after midnight. She'd been shooting reels, meeting with brands, going on shoots. He didn't even know who she'd been working with this week. Some photographer, he thought. She'd mentioned the name, but Ethan was too busy to remember. Luca, he muttered, remembering. Luca, someone there. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but he couldn't place it. Maybe it was in one of her posts, or was it someone from their old circle, from their college days at Berkeley? Ethan opened his phone and pulled up Mia's Instagram. Her latest post was 3 hours old. She's in a black dress, sitting on a leather couch, looking into the mirror with a small, enigmatic smile. The caption, "Sometimes you just have to be yourself, or someone new, #behindthelens." The post already had 47,000 likes and hundreds of comments. Queenie. Ethan scrolled further. In the stories, Mia was on a shoot. A studio, lights on, laughing, fixing her hair, while someone off camera said something that made her burst out laughing. The camera briefly showed a man with a camera tall, dark hair, wearing a black shirt. Luca. Ethan froze, looking at him. Something about the way the guy was looking at Mia, the way he moved around her, made him feel a little irritated. Or was it his fatigue? He didn't know. He turned off his phone and leaned back against the couch, closing his eyes. He needed to sleep. Tomorrow was another day, another battle with code, investors, deadlines. But instead of sleeping, his brain began to analyze. The notification, the closed folder, Luca, Mia's laughter in stories. It was all data, but it didn't add up. Yet. Ethan, Mia's voice, sleepy and slightly hoarse, came from the hallway. He opened his eyes and saw her in the doorway. She was wearing an oversized t-shirt with the logo of their old startup, her hair pulled back into a messy bun. "When did you get here?" "Just now," he replied, trying to smile. "I didn't want to wake you." She nodded, yawning, and walked to the kitchen, pouring herself some water. "How's the pitch?" she asked, over her shoulder. Ignoring him, "It's fine," he said, although that wasn't entirely true. The investors were asking questions he didn't yet have answers to, but he didn't want to burden her with them. "How's your shoot going?" Mia paused for a second before answering. "Cool. Luca's a genius. The pictures are going to be amazing." She turned to him, leaning against the counter. "Want to see them?" Ethan looked at her. Her face was relaxed, but there was something in her eyes he couldn't decipher. Or was he just projecting? "Tomorrow," he said. "I'm about to pass out." Mia stood at the counter like a statue, only her fingers on the glass trembling slightly. A light film of smoothie flowed down the glass, and scenarios were already running through her head. What words, what intonations, what truth could be dosed so that it still sounded beautiful? But she didn't follow Ethan. Not now. Her gaze returned to the laptop screen private gallery. Updated 8 minutes Agoth small gray window with white font seemed innocent, almost insignificant. Almost. She touched the touchpad and the screen came to life, illuminating her face with a soft blue light. There were folders, password protected. They were technically and impersonally named Archive A, Client Proofs _ 2023, Material _04, but she knew that inside were more than just photographs. Inside were moments that were never meant to surface. Some of them are with Luca. In an informal setting, taken not with his professional camera, but with a phone, with distorted focus and too much emotion. Taken when everything still seemed like a game. She closed the lid of her laptop, slowly, without a sound. Then she took a breath. One, deep, and went into the bathroom, where she turned on the tap and let the water run, as if that could wash away the fine dust of the past that had settled in the air since Luca's arrival. In the bedroom, Ethan lay still, unblinking, barely breathing. He wasn't paranoid. He knew what worry without reason looked like. But he also knew Mia had a life before him, and that was okay. All adults carry shadows with them. The only question was whether those shadows became part of the present. He remembered her reaction, not fear, not confusion, but readiness, as if she knew that sooner or later he would have to explain something. Patreon drafts. Too convenient. Too fast. He turned on his side, toward the empty half of the bed. He could hear the water running in the bathroom and knew she wasn't just washing herself. She was waiting, stretching, thinking, constructing a theory. Ethan knew one simple truth. When you need to hide something, you remain silent. And when you want to be believed, you speak first. He closed his eyes. But instead of darkness, he saw a flash, a red light. Small, pulsating. She didn't disappear. The sun was just beginning to rise above the horizon when Mia threw her duffel bag into the trunk of her rented Jeep Wrangler. The bright yellow car sat outside their Santa Monica home, glinting in the morning light like something out of a movie poster. Mia was wearing a white linen shirt tied at the waist and a wide-brimmed hat that made her look like she was in an indie film. She checked her backpack. Camera, extra lenses, power bank, SPF 50 sunscreen. Everything for a press tour, she told Ethan. "Are you sure you don't want me to come with you?" Ethan asked, standing in the doorway with a mug of strong, almost scalding coffee. His voice was calm, but there was a slight wariness to it, a barely perceptible tension like a tightly taut string. He looked like he always did, in his everyday startup uniform, a t-shirt with a logo, Y Combinator, dark blue jeans, and mismatched socks. But everything betrayed fatigue. His hunched shoulders, his limp grip on his mug, the bluish shadows under his eyes that resembled brushstrokes left by a sleepless night at his laptop. He hardly drank coffee at such moments. He held it as if it contained answers. Mia turned to him with a smile, practiced, almost theatrical. She smiled as if for a camera, even when there was no camera nearby. Ethan, it's just a couple of days. The brand wants exclusive content, something along the lines of nature and style. You know how it works. She took a step forward, touched his cheek on tiptoe with a kiss light, without leaving a trace. Besides, you need to prepare for the next pitch. I can't distract my genius startup guy. He nodded, but his gaze lingered on her face, a little longer than usual. It was as if he were searching for something there, a crack, an awkwardness, a moment of uncertainty. But he found nothing, only a smooth surface, like a perfectly airbrushed story. Just, right, okay, and send me some photos, he said, trying to put warmth into his voice. I want to see what kind of nature and style it is. Of course, she answered, already turning towards the car. Love you. And I you, she threw over her shoulder. Mia climbed into the Jeep, slammed the door, turned on the engine, and the music poured out of the speakers, drowning out her thoughts. A minute later, her car, a bright yellow dot in the dusty green silence of the street, disappeared around the corner. Ethan stood there, looking at the space that had only moments before been filled with her voice, her scent, her movement. Now everything seemed quieter, as if even the birds had decided to take a break. He took a slow sip of coffee, bitter. There was just a little bit left, and that was almost good enough. Something about her leaving seemed wrong to him. Not obvious, not external. Internal. It wasn't a suspicion, but rather a sense of something wrong. Like a bug that isn't immediately obvious, but you feel like there's something wrong somewhere deep in the code. First, zero reaction. Then the light blinks. Then the logic breaks down. Ethan knew how it was. He knew it all too well. He returned to the house and closed the door. But the red light was still pulsating in his chest. The Pacific Coast Highway stretched along the coast like an endless film reel. Mia rolled down the window, and the wind blew in, playing with her hair. Tom Petty was blasting from the speakers, his raspy voice singing about freedom and the open road. Beside her, in the passenger seat, Lucas Santos was scrolling on his iPad, his fingers flicking across the screen as easily as he controlled a camera. "Are you sure your husband doesn't mind you coming with me?" he asked, not looking up from the screen. His tone was light, but with a sly edge that made Mia glance at him quickly. "It's a job, Luca," she said, trying to sound casual. "Ethan knows content is my bread and butter. He's not the type to make a scene." Luca chuckled, putting down his iPad and turning to face her. His dark eyes glittered as if he knew something she wasn't saying. "Work, of course. But, you know, these landscapes." He nodded toward the cliffs overlooking the ocean. "They make people more honest. Or braver." Mia felt her cheeks flush slightly, but she just laughed. "Be bold? Are you going to make me pose on the edge of a cliff?" "Maybe," he leaned in a little closer, his voice lower. "Or maybe I just want to see how far you're willing to go for the perfect shot." She swallowed, but didn't look away. The wind fluttered her hat, and she took it off, tossing it into the back seat. "I always go all the way," she said, the words hanging in the air like a challenge. They stopped at a lookout point in Big Sur, where the cliffs dropped into the raging ocean and fog hung like smoke over the water. Luca pulled out his camera, and Mia began laying out her props. A blanket, a basket of fruit, a pair of vintage sunglasses. It was her idea to shoot something boho chic, but with a wild, untamed edge. The brand she was working with wanted authenticity, and she was going to give it to them. Or at least a convincing illusion. "Okay, let's start with something simple," Luca said, holding up the camera. "Go to the edge, stand with your back to the ocean. Look at me, but think about something personal." Mia stepped toward the edge, feeling the wind chill her skin. She turned, her white shirt billowing like a sail. Luca snapped frame after frame, moving around her with the grace of a predator. His directions were minimal, but each time he said, like this, or just a little more, his voice sounded like he was talking about something more than just a pose. "You look like you've escaped someone's dream," he said, lowering the camera. His eyes lingered on her, and Mia felt her pulse quicken. "But I want more. Give me you." She laughed, but it sounded nervous. "More than me? Luca, I'm already standing on the edge of a cliff with a shirt that's about to fly into the ocean." He stepped closer, his boots crunching on the gravel. "I don't mean the shirt," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "I mean what you're hiding. That sparkle in your eyes, it's not for the camera, it's for someone." Mia froze. She wanted to laugh it off, to walk away from this conversation, but something in his gaze held her in place. She knew it was dangerous, this closeness, these words. But Big Sur, with its wind and waves, seemed to erase all boundaries. She stepped toward him, closing the distance. "Do you always talk like that to models?" she asked, her voice quieter than usual, slightly hoarse. "Only with those who touch me," he replied, not looking away. "And you, Mia, definitely touched me." For a second, the world narrowed to just the two of them. The rocks, the ocean, even the camera all gone. Mia felt her hand reach for his shirt, but at the last moment she stopped, stepping back. "Let's shoot," she said, turning back to the ocean. "The brand wants content." Luca nodded, but his smile said he noticed her movement, and that he knew what she felt. Meanwhile, in Santa Monica, Ethan sat at his desk, staring at the screen of his MacBook. The office was empty, it was Saturday, and most of his team was off to the beach or hanging out with friends. But Ethan couldn't afford to take a break, not with deadlines looming and investors clamoring for a demo. But instead of code, his mind was on Mia. Her press tour sounded plausible. She often went to such events, sometimes to Palm Springs, sometimes to San Diego. But something about her story didn't add up. She didn't mention the brand by name, which was odd, since she was usually all about new contracts. And then there were those stories she posted yesterday. The ocean, the sunset, but without geotags. Mia always geotagged. It was her brand to share everything. Ethan pulled up her Instagram. The latest post was from the same shoot with Luca. Mia on the couch, mysterious, beautiful. The comments were full of excitement, but Ethan scrolled through them, looking for something specific. One follower wrote, "Is this Big Sur? I love that place." Ethan frowned. Big Sur? She didn't say she was going there. He pulled up her iCloud on his laptop. They shared a family account for backups. This wasn't spying, he told himself. Just checking. He went to photos and started scrolling through the most recent uploads. There were shots from this morning. Mia against the backdrop of rocks, the ocean, in that white shirt. But in the metadata for one of the photos, he noticed a geotag, Big Sur, California, and something else, a shadow in the corner of the frame, a male figure with a camera around his neck. Ethan felt his throat tighten. He opened Finder and searched for the private gallery folder he'd seen on her laptop. It was synced with iCloud, but password protected. He tried their shared password, no luck. He tried their wedding date, no luck either. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. He didn't know if he wanted to dig any further, but the red light in his head was getting brighter. He picked up his phone and texted Mia, "How's the press tour going? Where are you now?" A few minutes later, she replied, "Everything's great, filming on the coast. We'll post pics soon." Ethan stared at the screen. The coast, not Big Sur, just the coast. He leaned back in his chair, looking out the picture window at Los Angeles glittering in the afternoon light. Somewhere out there, among the rocks and waves, was his wife, and maybe someone else. Ethan closed his laptop, but the feeling of losing control remained. Ethan sat in his home office, surrounded by 3 computer monitors that cast a blue light on his face. The clock on the wall said 2:17 am, but he didn't feel tired, just cold, stubborn determination. His fingers flew across the keyboard, and the terminal on the main screen filled with lines of code, commands, and logs. Finder was open on one monitor, showing Mia's iCloud folder structure. Another was a data recovery utility he'd written for a college hackathon. A third was a Google map with a geotagged spot in Big Sur, where Mia had spent the last 2 days. He didn't want to do this. He didn't want to rummage through her data like some kind of paranoid. But after her evasive answer about the coast and that shadow of a man in one of her photos, the red light in his head turned into a siren. Ethan was an it guy to the core. He believed in data, in logs, in facts. If there was a bug in the code, you found it, analyzed it, and fixed it. If there was a bug in life, well, he was going to find it the same way. It all started with iCloud. Their family account had been set up 3 years ago, when they were first married, to sync photos, notes, and reminders. Mia had never changed the password, or so he thought. But the private gallery folder he'd seen on her laptop was inaccessible. He tried several passwords, her birthday, their anniversary, even the name of her childhood dog. Nothing. So he decided to take a different approach. Ethan connected an external SSD, which automatically saved their iCloud backups. Even if Mia had deleted something from her account, traces might remain in the backups. He launched his recovery utility, a small Python script he'd written back in Berkeley to recover deleted files. Ethan sat back in his chair, watching the progress bar slowly fill. His heart was beating faster than he wanted to admit. This wasn't just a file restore. This was an invasion, but he couldn't stop. Not when his gut was screaming that something was wrong. 15 minutes later, the utility returned with the results. 3 raw files recovered from the private gallery folder. Ethan opened the first file in Lightroom. It was a shot of Mia against the backdrop of the cliffs of Big Sur, taken at golden hour, when the sun bathed everything in warm light. She was leaning against the railing of the observation deck, her shirt slightly unbuttoned, exposing her collarbone. Her gaze was not directed at the camera, but off to the side, with a small, almost intimate smile. Ethan felt his throat tighten. He knew that smile. It wasn't for followers. It wasn't for brands. It was for someone in particular. Ethan froze, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. Luca, the photographer from her stories, the one whose shadow had flickered across one of her shots. He opened the next file. Another shot of Mia, this time sitting on a blanket, surrounded by a basket of fruit and a glass of wine. Her posture was relaxed, but there was something alive in her eyes. Something he hadn't seen in a long time. Timestamp, 6:47 p.m. Same day, same place. The third file wasn't a photo, but a short video, shot with the same camera. Ethan clicked it, and the screen filled with images of Mia laughing, the wind blowing through her hair, leaning back on the blanket, looking at someone off camera. Luca's voice, low and warm, says, "You look like you know a secret. Tell me." Mia replies, her voice soft, almost a whisper, "Maybe I do, but you'll have to earn it." The camera zooms in, her face filling the frame, and the video ends. Ethan leaned back, blood pounding in his temples. It wasn't proof, not really, but it was too much, too close, too intimate. He closed the video and opened Terminal to check the iCloud logs. If Mia had deleted those files, then she didn't want anyone to see them. But why? And why had she lied about the press tour? He ran another command to scan the sync logs. The terminal returned a list of transactions over the last 48 hours. The deletion happened a few hours after the upload. She was cleaning up the mess. Ethan felt his hands shaking. He didn't want to believe it meant what he thought it meant. But data doesn't lie. He opened Google Maps and entered the coordinates from the metadata. The map showed the exact location, an overlook in Big Sur, next to a small hotel called Cliffside Haven. He Googled the hotel. The hotel's website promised secluded rooms with ocean views and a romantic ambience. Ethan felt his stomach clench. He opened her Instagram to check her stories. She'd posted a new one, a sunset over the ocean, her hand holding a glass of wine, captioned, "The coast is calling #naturey vibes." There was no geotag, but he already knew where it was taken. He scrolled through her older posts, looking for any mention of Luca. In one of the comments under the post from that studio shoot, someone had written, Luca Santos makes magic again. Ethan clicked on Luca's profile. His feed was full of modeling shots, landscapes, and behind-the-scenes videos from shoots. But one post, uploaded that morning, caught his eye. A black and white shot of Mia standing on a cliff, captioned, "When the muse speaks louder than words." Big survives. Ethan felt his breathing get heavier. He opened the terminal and ran another command to check if any more files had synced from Luca's device. He knew he was getting too far. This wasn't just curiosity, it was an invasion of her privacy. But he couldn't stop. He found another file, undeleted, in the shared albums folder. It was a photo of Mia and Luca, apparently taken with a timer. They were standing at the edge of a cliff, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. Timestamp, 7:15 p.m., same day. Ethan closed his laptop, unable to look any further. His mind, accustomed to analyzing data, generating hypotheses and solutions, was now paralyzed. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the dark streets of Santa Monica. Somewhere out there, hundreds of miles away, was Mia, with Luca, and he didn't know what to do with that knowledge. He returned to the desk and opened the word processor. His fingers hovered over the keyboard. He wanted to write to her, to ask her directly, but what would he say? "I hacked your iCloud and I know you're lying." Instead, he wrote, "Hey, just checking in. How's the press tour going? Miss you." He sent the message and stared at the phone screen, waiting for a response. 5 minutes passed. 10, nothing. He opened the laptop again and ran another command to see if it had loaded anything new. The terminal was empty, but the red light in his head was now brighter than ever. Ethan leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes. He saw code before him, clean, logical, predictable. But his life, his marriage, his couple of goals, all of it was a bug he didn't know how to fix. Dusk was falling over Big Sur, turning the sky a deep indigo that merged with the ocean on the horizon. Mia and Luca drove down a narrow road off the Pacific Coast Highway toward an abandoned motel Luca had found the day before while scrolling through Google Maps for something with character. The Jeep Wrangler bounced over potholes, and Fleetwood Mac played softly on the speakers. Stevie Nicks' wistful voice matched their mood perfectly. Mia stared out the window, her fingers fiddling nervously with the strap of the camera resting in her lap. She knew this shoot wasn't just another piece of content. It was something else, something she couldn't name. "Are you sure this place is safe?" she asked, glancing at Luca. He was driving with one hand, the other resting casually on the armrest. His black shirt was unbuttoned a few buttons, and the tattoos on his chest flashed in the headlights of oncoming cars. "Safe?" he grinned, keeping his eyes on the road. "Mia, we're not coming here for safety. We're coming for a shot no one will forget, even if no one sees it." Her heart skipped a beat. She knew he was right. This shoot was their little secret, a moment that belonged only to them. No brands, no followers, no couple of goals. Just her, Luca, and the camera that, as he said, sees the truth. But the truth scared her, because the truth meant admitting that she was no longer the Mia who promised Ethan she would love him forever. They pulled into the gravel parking lot in front of the motel. The Starlight Inn sign blinked neon pink and blue, but half the letters had long since burned out, leaving only the words Star Inn. The building looked like it had been abandoned in the 80s, peeling paint, rusty railings, windows boarded up with plywood. But there was something appealing about the desolation, as if the motel held the stories of those who had stayed there, running away from their lives. Luca killed the engine and silence fell over them, broken only by the distant sound of the ocean and the faint hum of neon. He turned to Mia, his eyes shining in the dim light. "Ready?" he asked, his voice low, almost intimate. She nodded, though her insides were clenched with a mixture of excitement and fear. "Let's do it." They got out of the car. Luca pulled out his camera and gear bag, and Mia grabbed a backpack filled with props. A black lace bodysuit she'd bought on impulse at a Skims sale, a pair of vintage sunglasses, and a bottle of wine they'd grabbed from their room at Cliffside Haven. She hadn't planned on using the bodysuit for the shoot, it was just in case. But now, under the flashing neon, that in case seemed inevitable. They entered the motel through an unlocked door that led into the lobby. The dusty carpet muffled their footsteps, and the air smelled of damp and old tobacco. Luca turned on the flashlight on his phone, illuminating the peeling walls and the reception desk, which was littered with yellowed brochures. He stopped at the stairs leading to the second floor. "Let's go upstairs," he said. "There's a room with a window that catches the neon. That'll be our shot." Mia followed him, her sneakers squeaking on the wooden steps. Room 204 had a broken window, but the neon sign outside cast a pink and blue glow, casting contrasting shadows on the cracked walls. A bed with a sagging mattress sat against the wall, an old CRT TV covered in dust next to it. Luca set his bag on the floor and began laying out his equipment. A softbox, a tripod, a couple of LED panels he'd brought for extra light. "This place is like something out of a thriller," Mia said, walking around the room. She ran her finger along the windowsill, leaving a trail in the dust. "Are you sure no one will find us?" Luca laughed, setting up his camera on a tripod. "Find it? Mia, this is Big Sur. It's just ghosts and us." He looked at her, his gaze lingering on her lips. "And honestly, I don't mind being a ghost for one night." She felt her cheeks heat up, but instead of laughing it off, she stepped closer. "Then let's make this night worth it," she said, her voice quieter, a little husky. Luca nodded, his smile widening. "Get changed. I'll set up the lights." Mia retreated to the corner of the room, where the shadows hid her from his view. The room was warm, almost stuffy, but in this half-light the air seemed denser, richer. She unbuttoned her shirt, slowly, as if she were throwing off not the fabric but a roll. Her jeans slid down her hips, falling to the floor with a soft rustle. She pulled on a black bodysuit. The smooth, dense fabric merged with her body, emphasizing every line, every tension in her shoulders, stomach, breathing. She paused for a moment by the old chest of drawers, looking into a cracked mirror in which her reflection was split into several parts. Each one contained something different. Somewhere she looked scared, somewhere predatory. But in the very central crack straight, thin as a razor, Mia saw the self she had been hiding for a long time. Not the influencer, not the creator, not Mia and Jules. The woman who wanted to be not only seen, but also understood. Not by likes, not by reach statistics, but through the eyes of one person. This person, Luca. When she returned, Luca had finished setting up the lights. He was leaning against the lens stand, adjusting the focus ring on his camera. The softbox cast a soft glow, mixing with the purple and blue neon coming through the blinds from the street. The light seemed to vibrate on her skin. He raised the camera, but paused for a second, looking at it. His pupils dilated slightly, and his breathing changed, like a man who suddenly saw something not just beautiful, but meaningful. The camera hung at his chest, but he didn't press the button. At that moment, she wasn't the subject. She was the center of power. "Damn, Mia," he breathed. "You look dangerous." She smiled, feeling his words wash over her. "Dangerous?" she asked, stepping closer. "Is that good or bad?" "This is what I want to capture," he said, raising the camera. "Lie down on the bed. Look into the lens, but think about what you want right now." Mia lay on the mattress, her hair spilling over the pillow, the neon light falling on her skin, creating a play of shadows. The camera clicked, but Luca gave little direction. He moved around her, changing angles, but his gaze was as important as the lens. She felt him not just as a photographer, but as a man who saw her not as a brand, but as a woman. "Tell me," he said, lowering the camera. "What do you want, Mia? Not for the camera, for yourself." She swallowed, her fingers tightening on the sheets. I want to feel alive," she admitted, her voice shaking. "Not just playing a role, not being someone's wife, someone's muse, just being." Luca nodded, his eyes never leaving hers. He set the camera on a tripod and came closer, sitting on the edge of the bed. His hand touched her wrist, and the touch was like a spark running through her body. "You're alive," he said quietly. I can see it, and I want you to feel it. Mia looked at him, her breathing uneven. She knew she should stop, tell him it was too much, that she had Ethan, that she had their life, their hash couple of goals. But instead, she reached for him, her fingers brushing his cheek, lightly covered in stubble. He leaned closer, and their lips met slowly, almost tentatively, but with such intensity that she felt the world around her dissolve. The camera continued to roll, the timer Luca had set for the series of shots clicking every few seconds. Neon light washed over them, pink and blue, like some forbidden dream. His hands slid around her waist, pulling her closer, and she didn't resist. This wasn't just a kiss. This was the moment she allowed herself to forget who she was supposed to be. They pulled away, both breathing hard. Luca looked at her, his eyes dark, full of something she couldn't name. He began, but she put a finger to his lips. Don't say anything, she whispered. Just take it off. He nodded, turning back to the camera. The footage continued, but now each frame was saturated with their intimacy. Mia moved on the bed, her poses becoming more revealing, leaning back, letting her bodysuit slide off one shoulder, her gaze locked on Luca. He filmed silently, but his breathing was as ragged as hers. The neon light picked her out of the darkness, highlighting every curve, every shadow. These were images she knew would never see the light of day. They were too real, too dangerous. When the shoot was over, they sat on the floor, leaning against the wall, drinking wine straight from the bottle. The motel was quiet, only the neon continued to flicker outside the window. Mia looked at Luca, his profile in the half-light, and felt guilt mixing with euphoria. These photos, she began, her voice wavering slightly, as if it were fluctuating with the beating of her heart. They're just for us, right? Luca turned to face her. The light from the window softly outlined his profile, his cheekbones, the shadow of his stubble, his gaze that held no pressure but something deeper, understanding. Only for us, he confirmed. His voice was low, calm, but with a hint of sadness, the kind that comes to people who have heard goodbye too often from those who wanted to say stay. He placed the camera on his lap, carefully, as if it were a relic and not a piece of equipment. But Mia, are you sure you want to keep this a secret? You look like you've finally found yourself. She was silent. Inhale, exhale. Then she turned away as if the light had become too harsh. My throat was dry. The words were stuck somewhere between my heart and my lips, because he was right, and it was scary. Yes, she found herself. But she couldn't fit this self into the usual picture. A flawless, controlled, perfectly framed life with Ethan, clear boundaries, meaningful steps, a content plan for the month ahead. And here, in the cracked mirror, under the neon light, and in his lens, was another Mia, alive, not perfect, but real. Ethan's computer screen cast a harsh blue light on his face, revealing his tired eyes and tight lips. His office in downtown Los Angeles was silent, save for the rhythmic clack of his keyboard and the occasional click of his mouse. On the main screen, Adobe Premiere was open, where he was editing a video not for his startup, not for his investor pitch, but for what he'd mentally dubbed the end of hash couple goals. On his second screen, a folder of recovered files, raw photos and videos from Big Sur that he'd found in Mia's iCloud. On his third, Instagram, where he'd just uploaded his first story, a black background, white text reading "The Truth Behind the Filters," and a timer counting down to 24 hours. Ethan leaned back in his chair, looking at his phone. The story had already racked up 127 views in 3 minutes. His followers, mostly coworkers, startup founders, and a few friends from Berkeley began deeming him. Hey, what's the big deal? Is this about a startup or what? But he didn't respond. He was waiting for one viewer, Mia. He hadn't slept in 24 hours. After he'd recovered those files, the pictures of Mia and Luca, their laughter, their closeness, his world had begun to crumble. He tried to rationalize, justify, anything, but every frame, every timecode was a blow. She'd lied. Not just about the press tour, but about them, about who they were to each other. And now he wanted her to feel what he felt. Not just pain, but public exposure. If their lives were built on filters, he was going to remove them all. He returned to Premiere, adding the finishing touches to the video. It was a montage of restored footage. Mia on the cliff, smiling at Luca, their silhouettes in a neon-lit motel. He overlaid the lyrics, hash couple of goals, or hash behind the lens. For the soundtrack, he chose Radiohead's Fake Plastic Trees, a slow, heartbreaking tune that perfectly encapsulated his state of mind. The video ended with a black screen and the question, "What are you hiding, Mia?" He exported the file, uploaded it to an encrypted Google Drive, and scheduled it to be published in 24 hours unless she explained herself. His phone vibrated. Push notification. At Maya Harper viewed your story. Ethan felt his pulse quicken. She saw. The ball was in her court now. Meanwhile, Mia was sitting at Earth Cafe on Melrose, sipping an iced latte with oat milk. She'd just gotten back from Big Sur, her suitcase still in the back of her Jeep, parked nearby. She looked perfect, a white crop top, high-waisted jeans, Ray-Bans perched on the top of her head. But inside, she was on edge. The ride with Luca, their motel shoot, that kiss it had all been a dream she couldn't shake. She knew she'd gone too far, but she didn't know how to turn back. Her phone was on the table, the screen flashing with notifications. She opened Instagram to post a new story, something neutral, like a sunset over the ocean, to distract her followers from her silence. Instead, her eyes fell on Ethan's story icon. He rarely posted, and that in itself was strange. She clicked on his profile, and her heart sank. The truth behind the filters. Timer, 0 hours 23 minutes and 47 seconds. Black background, white font, no hints, just cold, menacing brevity. Mia felt her fingers tighten around her phone. What was this? Some kind of marketing gimmick for his startup? Or she didn't want to finish that thought. She texted him, "Hey, what's this story? What's this about?" But the message went unanswered. Instead, another notification arrived. At Ethan Harper added a new story. She clicked. It was now a screenshot of the iCloud interface with a private gallery folder highlighted. The caption, "Sometimes the truth is in the metadata." Mia felt her breathing become ragged. He knew. But how? And how much? She opened iCloud on her phone, frantically checking the folders. She was sure she'd deleted those files, the photos and videos from the motel. She'd even emptied the trash. But Ethan, he wasn't a guy. He could recover anything. Her fingers shook as she dialed his number. It rang, but he didn't answer. Instead, another notification came. At Ethan Harper, 0 hours 23 minutes and 12 seconds. Mia stood up, throwing a 20 on the table for her coffee, and ran out of the coffee shop. Her Jeep was parked across the street, and she climbed inside, trying to collect her thoughts. She opened a chat with Luca, but stopped. What could she tell him? "My husband found our photos. It was too real, too dirty." Instead, she texted Caitlin. "Kate, I'm in trouble. Ethan knows something. I need your help ASAP." Ethan stared at his phone, ignoring Mia's call. He wasn't ready to talk. Not now. He turned back to his monitor, opening a terminal to check if anyone had tried to access his Google Drive. The logs were clean, but he changed his password anyway, a habit he'd developed over years of working in startups where a data breach could cost millions. His fingers hovered over the keyboard as Mia's text came through. "Ethan, please answer. It's not what you think." He snorted, anger mixing with hurt. Not what he thought. He'd seen her with Luca. Seen the way she laughed, the way she looked at him, the way she let him get closer than any photographer should be. He added another story, a black and white shot of Mia on a cliff in Big Sur, taken by Luca. Her face was missing, just a silhouette, but anyone who knew her would recognize her. The caption, "Who's behind the camera?" The timer ran, 0 hours 22 minutes and 58 seconds. Notifications poured in. Friends, followers, even a couple investors wrote, "Hey, is everything okay?" But he didn't respond. He waited for her to react. Mia sped down Interstate 10, heading toward their Santa Monica home. Her phone, resting on the passenger seat, was flashing notifications. She glanced at the screen. Ethan's new story. A silhouette on a cliff. Her silhouette. She gripped the steering wheel, panic clenching in her chest. He didn't just know. He wanted to destroy her. Publicly. At her own game. She parked at the house and ran inside, dropping her bag in the hallway. The living room was empty. Ethan's laptop was closed, but his Tesla wasn't in the driveway. He's in the office, she thought. She grabbed her MacBook, opened iCloud, but access to private gallery was blocked. Her password didn't work. She tried to think of anything else. She might have left messages, geotags, anything. But her thoughts were jumbled. The phone vibrated. Caitlin. What the fuck? Is Ethan losing his mind? What have you done? Mia wrote. I don't know how to explain. Please come over. But before Caitlin could respond, another notification arrived. At Ethan Harper, 0 hours 22 minutes and 30 seconds. Mia clicked. This time it was a screenshot of metadata, timecode, geolocation, the name Lucas Santos in the camera operator field. The caption, data doesn't lie. She threw her phone on the couch, her hands shaking. She knew she should call Luca, warn him, but what would she say? That their secret filming was no longer a secret. That her husband had turned into a hacker, ready to tear their lives apart. Instead, she opened Instagram and started deeming Ethan. Ethan, stop. Let's talk. This is not what it seems. But the message went unread. Ethan stared at the monitor, where the timer in his stories was counting down to 0 hours 22 minutes and 15 seconds. He felt both powerful and broken. He could destroy her career, their brand, their marriage with a single click. But did he want that? He thought about Mia, the one in Berkeley, drinking cheap beer and dreaming about startups. The one who laughed at his jokes about code. Where was Mia? And why hadn't he noticed when she disappeared? His phone vibrated again. A message from Mia. Ethan, I'm home. Please come over. We need to talk. He looked at the screen but didn't respond. Instead, he added another story. Black screen, white text. 24 hours to tell the truth. Or I will tell you. Timer, 0 hours 22 minutes and 0 seconds. He stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the lights of Los Angeles. The city was as fake as their hash couple of goals, all glitz and filters and staged. But underneath the glitz was the truth, and he was going to bring it out, even if it meant destroying them both. Mia sat on the couch, staring at her phone. Ethan's timer was ticking down to 0 hours 21 minutes and 58 seconds. Each notification was a blow. She opened Lucas' stories, but he hadn't posted anything since the morning. She texted him, Luca, we need to talk. Urgently. But he didn't respond. Her fingers hovered over the screen. She knew she had to stop Ethan, but how? Confess? Or lie again? She heard a car in the driveway. Her heart jumped. Ethan. She ran to the window, but it was Caitlin climbing out of her Mini Cooper. Mia opened the door and Caitlin flew in, her eyes wide. Okay, what the hell? She began, throwing her bag on the floor. Ethan hacked your iCloud. Is this real? Mia swallowed, her voice shaking. I don't know how he knew, but he found the photo, the shoot in Big Sur, with Luca. Caitlin froze, her eyebrows shooting up. With Luca? Mia, did you sleep with him? No, Mia cried, but then stopped herself. Not really. It was just a shoot, but it went too far. Caitlin shook her head, sitting down next to him. Girl, you're in deep trouble. Ethan's not just mad. He wants to burn everything down. Have you seen his stories? It's like a trailer for a thriller. Mia nodded, her eyes filling with tears. What should I do, Kate? If he publishes this, I'll lose everything. Sponsors, followers, reputation. What about Ethan? Caitlin asked quietly. Are you going to lose him? Mia was silent, looking at the floor. She didn't know the answer. She loved Ethan, or at least loved who he was. But Luca saw her, felt her, gave her what she couldn't find at home. And now this choice was tearing her apart. Her phone vibrated. At Ethan Harper, 0 hours 21 minutes and 45 seconds. Mia clicked. Black screen, text, TikTok Mia. She closed her eyes, feeling the time slip away like sand in a clock. The timer ticked, and with each click, her world came closer to collapse. Ethan sat in his office, his fingers hovering over his MacBook's trackpad. The screen was on Instagram, where the timer on his stories was ticking down. 0 hours, minutes, and 3 seconds. 0 hours, minutes, and 2 seconds. 2 hours, minutes, and 1 second. He took a deep breath, his heart pounding like a hammer in his chest. The video he'd prepared a montage of restored RAW files, iCloud screenshots, and EXIF data was uploaded to stories and scheduled to be published as a post. He'd called it The Truth Behind the Filters. The caption was simple. Couple of goals. Time to take off the filters. The soundtrack Radiohead's Fake Plastic Trees still echoed in his head, like his own broken heart. He clicked publish, and the screen flickered. The video began to load. First a black background with a text, "Sometimes the truth is in the metadata," then shots of Mia in Big Sur, smiling at Luca, their silhouettes in a motel under neon lights, EXIF screenshots with the name Luca Santos and timecodes confirming that this was not a press tour. The last frame was the heaviest, a photo of Mia and Luca, her leaning against his shoulder, their faces lit by pink neon. The text on the screen, "Who's behind the camera, Mia?" The video ended with a question, "What are you hiding?" Ethan leaned back in his chair, staring at the screen. The views started to climb, 50, 200, 1,000 in a minute. His phone buzzed with notifications. Friends, coworkers, even random followers wrote, "Hey, what was that? Ethan, are you okay?" But he didn't respond. He waited for Mia's reaction and the world they had built together. Mia stood in the kitchen of their Santa Monica home, her phone flashing notifications like a Christmas tree. She'd just returned from Earth Cafe, where Caitlin had tried to calm her down, but nothing was working. Ethan's timer was running out, and she knew what he would do. She opened Instagram, her fingers shaking as she clicked on his stories. The video loaded, and her world came crashing down. The footage from Big Sur, her laugh, the way she looked at Luca, it was all there, on the screen for everyone to see. The EXIF data, the timecodes, even a screenshot of her iCloud with her private gallery folder. She felt her knees buckle and grabbed the countertop. Caitlin, sitting on the couch, jumped when she saw her face. "Mia, what? What did he post?" Caitlin ran up, snatching the phone out of her hands. She looked at the screen, her eyes widening. "Oh, shit. He actually did that. That's a blast." Mia couldn't speak. She stared at her phone, where the video had surpassed 10,000 views. Comments poured in. "Is Mia cheating?" Couple of goals was fake." "Ethan, hang in there, bro." Her own phone began vibrating with notifications. Subscribers were unsubscribing. Sponsors were sending direct messages. One of the brands she worked with wrote, "Mia, we need to discuss our contract. This doesn't fit our image." She opened Twitter, and her heart sank. The hashtag #UnfollowMia was trending, with thousands of tweets. Did she really think this wouldn't get out? "Ethan is the king," he exposed her. Couple of goals are now couple fails. Someone made a collage of her old posts with Ethan, overlaying screenshots from his videos. Another user posted a meme of Mia in her signature hat, with the caption, "When your filter doesn't protect you from the truth." "Kate, what should I do?" Mia's voice was hoarse, on the verge of tears. "He's destroying me, publicly." Caitlin put a hand on her shoulder, but her face was serious. "Mia, you knew this would happen. You went too far with Luca. Now you have to answer, directly." Mia shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. "Answer? What? Tell me I screwed up? She trailed off, unable to say it out loud. That she'd betrayed Ethan. That she'd let Luca become more than just a photographer. Her phone vibrated again. A message from Luca. "Mia, what the hell? Your husband posted our photos. This is the end." She didn't respond. She didn't know what to say. Instead, she opened Instagram and started recording a video. Her hands were shaking, but she forced herself to smile. Hello, my sunshines, she began, her voice weak but her face composed. I know you've seen Ethan's stories, and I want to be honest. It, it was a misunderstanding. I was on set, it was work. I never meant to hurt anyone, especially Ethan. Please give me a chance to explain. She finished the recording but didn't publish it. She looked at Caitlin, her eyes pleading for support. That sounds like crap, doesn't it? Caitlin sighed, looking away. Mia, that sounds like an excuse. People aren't stupid. They see the footage. They see the way you look at Luca. You need something real. Mia nodded, but inside she felt empty. She deleted the video and started to write a post. I made a mistake. I'm not perfect. But I love Ethan, and I want to fix this. But her fingers froze. Did she love him? Or did she love their brand, their hash couple goals, their illusion? She put her phone down, unable to finish. Ethan watched as his post surpassed 50,000 views. Twitter was buzzing. Hash Unfollowmia was trending #1 in the US. Someone posted a screenshot of her old reel with the caption, "When you sell love and then sell your husband." Another user started a thread analyzing the EXIF data, confirming that the photos were taken on the same day in the same place. The internet was doing what it did best, tearing apart. His phone buzzed. A message from one of his startup investors. Ethan, this isn't the best PR. Let's talk. He snorted. Even his business was now at risk. But he didn't regret it. Not really. He wanted Mia to feel what it was like to be exposed, to understand what it was like to see her life torn apart. But deep down, he felt empty. He thought posting the video would bring relief, catharsis. Instead, he felt only pain. He opened their old Google Photos album, scrolled through the photos, them on the beach in Malibu, them in Berkeley, them at their wedding. Where did it all go wrong? Why hadn't he noticed? His phone blinked, a notification from Instagram. Mia had added a story. He clicked. It wasn't a video, but text. I'm not perfect, but I want to fix this. Please, Ethan, talk to me. He stared at the screen, his fingers frozen. She was asking to talk. But what could he say? That he would forgive her? That he would forget? Mia sat on the living room floor, surrounded by notifications. Her followers were falling, from 1.2 million to 900,000 in an hour. Brands kept unfollowing. First a smoothie company, then an eco-friendly straw brand. Her manager texted, Mia, we need a lull. Don't post anything until this blows over. But she knew a lull wouldn't help. The internet is unforgiving. Caitlin sat next to him, scrolling through Twitter. They call it the cancellation of the year, she said, her voice soft but honest. But Mia, it's not over. You can get over it. People forget. Forget. Mia laughed bitterly. Kate, these aren't just formal replies. This is my life, my brand, my marriage. Caitlin looked at her, her eyes full of sympathy. Then fight for what's important, not for followers, for Ethan, if you love him. Mia was silent. She didn't know if she loved him. She only knew that she didn't want to lose everything. She opened Instagram to message Ethan again, but was stopped by a new notification. Ethan Harper added a post. She clicked. It was an old reel of them, drinking smoothies on the patio, laughing, looking happy. The caption, was that real, or was I wrong? Mia closed her eyes, feeling tears streaming down her cheeks. The internet was exploding around her, but in that moment, all she could see was Ethan, his pain, his anger, his love that she had destroyed. She knew she had to respond. But the words stuck in her throat, like code with a bug that couldn't be fixed. It was a blindingly bright morning in Los Angeles, but Mia Harper felt like the sun had decided to pass her by. She was sitting in the dressing room of the Morning Buzz, a popular morning talk show watched by millions across the country. A mirror surrounded by light bulbs reflected her face, perfect makeup highlighting her cheekbones, a hint of gloss on her lips, eyes hidden behind a thin layer of smoky shadow. But no amount of filters could hide her fatigue. It had been 2 days since Ethan's story bomb, and her life had become a digital nightmare. The hashtag #Unfollowmia was still trending on Twitter, Her followers had dwindled to 700,000, and sponsors were dropping her deals one by one. Tonight's show was her last chance to hijack the narrative, or at least that's what her new crisis PR manager, Lisa Crow, assured her. Lisa, a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and an immaculate pantsuit, sat in the corner of the dressing room, scrolling through a clipboard of notes. "Mia, remember, you're a victim," she said, her voice as hard as steel. "You didn't cheat. You were trapped by circumstance. Ethan used his IT skills to manipulate data and make you look bad. This is your Dieselgate. We're playing on that." Mia nodded, but her fingers fiddled nervously with the hem of the white Zara dress Lisa had chosen for her innocent but strong look. "What if they ask about Luca?" she asked quietly. "About the motel?" Lisa peered at her over her glasses. "Luca signed an NDA last night. He won't say a word. You say it was a professional shoot, and that's it. If they start pressuring you, change the subject to Ethan. He hacked your iCloud. It's a violation of privacy. The public loves stories like that." Mia swallowed, looking at her reflection. She didn't feel like a victim. She felt guilty. But Lisa was right, the truth didn't matter anymore. What mattered was that people would believe her. She picked up her phone to check Instagram, but the screen was littered with notifications, comments, unfollows, even threats. Someone wrote, "You ruined hash couple goals, hypocrite." Another, "Bring Ethan back, he deserves better." She turned off the phone, her hands shaking. Mia stood up, straightening her shoulders. "I'm ready," she lied, looking at Lisa. Lisa nodded, but her gaze was cold. "Don't screw this up, Mia. This is your last chance." The Morning Buzz studio was awash in lights that made Mia feel dizzy. The set, a glass table, white couches, a giant screen with the show's logo created the illusion of coziness, but she felt like she was on the gallows. The host, Kelly Ramirez, with her perfect smile and flawless blonde bob, was already sitting across from her, flipping through question cards. The studio audience, about 100 people, was whispering, their eyes glued to Mia. She sat cross-legged and tried to smile, but her lips were trembling. "Good morning, Los Angeles," Kelly began, her voice as fresh as morning coffee. "Today we have a special guest, Mia Harper, the Instagram star whose life recently became the epicenter of a viral scandal. Mia, welcome." The crowd applauded politely, but Mia caught a few skeptical glances. She forced her smile to widen. "Thank you, Kelly. It's good to be here." "Oh, we all know the last few days haven't been easy for you." Kelly leaned in, her tone sympathetic but slightly predatory. "Your husband, Ethan, posted a video that, well, shook the internet. Hash unfollow is trending. Brands are breaking contracts. Tell us your side of the story." Mia took a deep breath, repeating Lisa's words to herself, "You're a victim." "Kelly, it was really hard," she began, her voice shaking but trying to keep it together. "I've built a career on being honest, on sharing my life. But what Ethan did, it was an invasion of my privacy. He hacked into my iCloud, pulled personal files that were part of a professional shoot, and made it look like I'd done something terrible." Kelly raised an eyebrow, her smile unwavering. "Professional shoot? You mean the shots with photographer Luca Santos? In the abandoned motel? They seemed pretty intimate." The room buzzed, and Mia felt her cheeks heat up. She clenched her fists under the table. "It was part of the concept," she said, trying to sound confident. "We were shooting something noir with a neon aesthetic. Luca is a professional, and everything we did was for the art. Ethan took it out of context to punish me." Kelly nodded, but her eyes said she didn't quite believe it. "Let's see what the internet says," she said, and the screen behind her came to life. Tweets flashed across it. "Mia is lying. This isn't a shoot, it's a romance. Hash unfollow did she think she wouldn't get caught?" Then a collage of comments. "Ethan deserves the truth. She sold their love for likes." Mia felt tears welling up, but forced herself to keep her face straight. "It hurts to see," she said, her voice breaking. "I'm not perfect, Kelly, but I didn't cheat. Ethan used his skills to manipulate data like some kind of Dieselgate. He wanted to destroy me because our marriage was under pressure. We both made mistakes. The room went silent, but Mia sensed their skepticism. Kelly leaned closer. You say it was a misunderstanding, but Ethan's video with timecodes, geotags, even Luca's name in the metadata looks pretty convincing. What do you say to those who think you deceived not only Ethan, but your followers as well? Mia swallowed, her eyes shining with tears. She knew this was her moment. Lisa had warned her, tears work, but don't overdo it. I will say that I am human, she began, her voice quiet but sincere. I built hash couple goals to inspire people, to show that love is work. But I made a mistake. I let work the shoots, the brands overshadow my personal life. And I'm sorry. To Ethan, to my followers, to everyone who believed in us. Kelly nodded, but her smile grew a little colder. That's a bold statement, Mia. But let's talk about Lucas Santos. Why is he silent? His Instagram has been silent since the scandal. What's going on? Mia froze. She couldn't tell him about the NDA Luca had signed yesterday to protect his career. One of her sponsors, a sportswear brand, had insisted on it, threatening to sue him if he talked. Luca, he's just a photographer, she said, trying to sound casual. He's doing his job and doesn't want to be dragged into this mess. Kelly narrowed her eyes, but didn't press. Instead, she turned to the camera. Well, viewers, you've heard Mia. But what do you think? Tweet us with the hashtag #MorningBuzzMia. And after the break, here's how to survive a public cancellation. Stay tuned. The lights dimmed and Mia felt her shoulders sag. She looked to Kelly for support, but the host was already scrolling through her phone, preparing for the next segment. Lisa emerged from the wings, her face tense. You did it, she said, but her tone was far from complimentary. But the internet didn't buy it. Check out Twitter. Mia opened her phone, her heart sinking. The hashtag #MorningBuzzMia was full of sarcasm. Mia's tears are as much a filter as her photos. Dieselgate, seriously? She's lying, and we all know it. Someone posted a meme of her talk show face superimposed on a still from the Hunger Games with a caption, "Volunteer for cancellation." Her followers continued to fall off. She now had 650,000. Lucas Santos sat in his Westwood apartment, staring at his laptop. His Instagram, usually full of new photos, had been dead since Ethan posted the video. He knew it was over. His career Vogue shoots, brand deals was hanging by a thread. Yesterday, he'd signed an NDA devised by lawyers from one of Mia's sponsors. The document was simple. Keep quiet about the Big Sur shoot, the motel, anything Mia related, or face $1 million lawsuit. He'd agreed because he had no choice. But that didn't stop him from tweeting, Lucas Santos is a sneaky marriage destroyer, and, where are you, Luca? Hiding. He texted Mia, I did as you asked. NDA signed. But this is the end, Mia. I can't be part of this. She didn't respond. He hadn't expected her to respond. He closed his laptop and looked out the window, where Los Angeles was ablaze with neon and lights. He had been part of her world, but now he was a ghost like the motel where they had crossed the line. Ethan watched the morning buzz on his laptop in his office. His team had gone home, and he was alone, surrounded by monitors and empty Red Bull cans. He saw Mia's tears, heard her talk about Dieselgate, about being a victim. But it didn't move him. He knew the truth, or at least the part of it that Lucas' camera showed. He opened Twitter, where #UnfollowMia was still trending. People were telling him, Ethan, you're a hero. You exposed her for being a phony. But he didn't feel like a hero. He felt empty. His phone vibrated. A message from an investor. Ethan, we need to talk about your PR. It's affecting the startup. He snorted, throwing the phone on the table. Even his business, his dream, was now under attack because of this scandal. But he didn't regret it. Or did he? He didn't know. He opened Instagram and saw Mia's latest post, a photo of her from their wedding, smiling and holding his hand. The caption, I made a mistake, but I want to fight for us. I'm sorry, Ethan. The post had attracted thousands of comments, but most were vitriolic. Too late. Filters won't save you. Ethan closed the app, his fingers shaking. Mia came home, her dress wrinkled, her makeup smudged. Caitlin was waiting for her in the living room, holding a glass of wine. "How was it?" she asked, but her tone suggested she already knew the answer. "Bad," Mia admitted, falling onto the couch. They didn't believe it. No one believed it. Caitlin sighed, sitting down next to her. "Mia, you tried, but you can't rewrite the truth. You know what you did." Mia looked at her, her eyes full of tears. "I didn't mean to. I just, I lost myself, Kate. In these reels, in this brand, I wanted to be alive." Caitlin hugged her, but said nothing. What was there to say? The internet was unforgiving, and the truth Mia had tried to hide was now out in the open. Her phone blinked, a notification from yet another brand canceling a contract. She didn't open it. She knew it was over. A year later, Los Angeles was still sparkling, but for Ethan Harper, its light now meant something different. He stood on a stage at a downtown convention center in front of 500 people gathered for the future of trust, a hybrid TED Talk and startup forum. Spotlights picked him out of the gloom, a dark jacket, a white shirt with no tie, wire-rimmed glasses. His voice, amplified by a microphone, sounded confident but slightly husky, as if he still carried the scars of last year's pain. "We live in the age of filters," he began, his gaze sweeping across the faces in the room. "Photo filters, words filters, truth filters. A year ago, I was part of that world. I was one half of Hash Couples, a brand that sold you perfect love. But the truth? The truth wasn't so pretty." The room was silent, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioners. Ethan paused, letting his words sink in. He was no longer the harried-it guy who spent all night recovering files from iCloud. He was Ethan Harper, the author of Unfiltered, which had been on the New York Times bestseller list for 3 months. The book was born out of his pain from the video that had blown up the internet, from his expose of Mia, from the collapse of their marriage. But instead of drowning in anger, he had turned it into a mission. "Digital honesty isn't just about code," he continued, his voice growing stronger. "It's about us, about how we choose what to show and what to hide. I hacked my wife's iCloud to find the truth, and I found it. But the truth didn't set me free. It destroyed everything I loved. And you know what I realized? The truth isn't the end. It's the beginning." Applause rippled through the room, and Ethan smiled, not the forced smile he'd had a year ago, but a real one, full of quiet confidence. His startup, a money management app, was still struggling, but his new career as a speaker was paying off more than he could have dreamed of. His talks at conferences, podcasts, and even on YouTube were racking up millions of views. People were calling him the voice of digital ethics, the man who'd shown that even in a world of likes and filters, you could be real. He ended his speech by quoting a line from his book, "Filters make us beautiful, but only the truth sets us free." The audience burst into applause, and Ethan left the stage feeling a lightness he hadn't felt in years. Waiting for him in the dressing room was his agent, a young guy in trendy sneakers, who was already planning his next tour of the States. "Ethan, that was powerful," the agent said, flipping through his tablet. "Ted wants you for next season, and 3 other podcasts are asking for interviews. Are you ready to be the face of the digital revolution?" Ethan laughed, taking off the microphone. "Revolution. I just want people to stop lying, to themselves and to others." But as he walked out of the conference center, he found himself thinking about Mia. He hadn't seen her since he'd signed the divorce papers 6 months earlier. He knew she'd tried to reach out, but he hadn't responded. Not because he hated her, but because he didn't know how to talk to someone who had been his other half, his Hash Couples, and then a stranger. Meanwhile, Mia was sitting in the small Westwood apartment she'd rented after their Santa Monica home sold. Her laptop was open to YouTube, where Ethan was streaming a live stream. She watched him talk about truth, about filters, about them. Her fingers tightened around her cold matcha latte, and she felt tears sting her eyes. He looked so alive, like she remembered him in Berkeley when they were just two students dreaming about the future. And she was a shadow of the Mia who once ruled Instagram. Her profile was now all but dead. After the Morning Buzz appearance and her failed attempt to rewrite the narrative, her followers had continued to fall away. They were now under 200,000, and most of the comments under her posts were vitriolic. Toxic queen, unfollow Mia forever. Her sponsors had disappeared, as if she had never existed. Even Caitlin, her trusted friend, was calling less often not out of malice, but because her own career as a stylist couldn't stand the association with her cancelled friend. Mia tried to start over. She launched a new account under a pseudonym, posting photos of sunsets, coffee shops, and random passers-by. But her style was too recognizable, and her followers quickly figured her out. The hashtag #unfollowmia trended again, and she deleted the account a week later. She tried looking for a job not on social media, but in the real world. But no one looked at her resume, labeled a toxic influencer. Even the coffee shops where she once shot reels wouldn't hire her as a barista. She opened Instagram and scrolled through old posts, the ones of her and Ethan drinking smoothies, laughing, posing for a drone. Couple of goals. It felt like another life, a dream she'd shattered. She remembered the motel in Big Sur, the neon lights, the kiss with Luca. She'd felt alive then, but now it felt like ashes. Luca had disappeared from her life the moment she signed the NDA. His career had suffered, but he'd survived, moving to New York and working with new brands. He'd texted her once, a month ago, "Sorry, Mia, this was a mistake." She didn't respond. What was she supposed to say? Her phone blinked, a notification from LinkedIn. Someone had viewed her profile. She clicked, hoping for a miracle that maybe an old connection would offer her a job. But it was Ethan. His profile photo in a suit jacket, with a stage in the background, was like a knife in the heart. She knew he was thriving. His book, his speaking engagements, his new mission, it was all in the news. She'd even seen a clip of him on a podcast where he talked about digital integrity with a passion she hadn't seen from him in years. Mia closed her laptop and walked to the window. Westwood was bustling, full of students and startups going about their business. She remembered hanging out here with Ethan when they first moved to LA. Anything was possible. Now she was alone, with a mark the internet would never forget. She picked up her phone and opened her notes. She started writing not a post, not a reel, but something for herself. "I was wrong. I lost everything because I wanted to be someone else. But I don't want to hide anymore." She didn't know what these words were for. Maybe for the book she would never write. Maybe for herself. Ethan drove down the 405, heading to Lax. He was on a flight to San Francisco, where he was scheduled to speak at another conference. His Tesla hummed softly, and the National played softly on the speakers, a melancholy soundtrack to his new life. He thought about his speech, about how he would speak about the truth, about how it freed him. But deep down, he knew that the truth had not set him completely free. He still saw Mia in every empty frame of his life. His phone buzzed, a text from his agent. "Ethan, the book has sold in 20 countries. We're getting ready to tour Europe." He smiled, but it was a bitter smile. He had succeeded, but at what cost? He had lost Mia, their home, their dreams. He had won in the eyes of the internet, but lost in his heart. He stopped at a traffic light, looking at a billboard advertising a new startup. It showed a couple laughing, with a caption, "Dream big." It reminded him of couple of goals, and he felt a pang. He knew Mia was out there, somewhere in this city, trying to put herself back together. He didn't hate her. He just didn't know how to forgive her. Mia was sitting in a cafe on Melrose, the Earth Cafe where it all began. She'd ordered a matcha latte, not for the photo, but simply because she loved the taste. Caitlin was sitting across from her, her phone turned off, a rarity for her. "Did you see his performance?" Caitlin asked, her voice soft and non-judgmental. Mia nodded, looking into her cup. He found himself, and I lost myself." Caitlin took her hand. "You're not lost, Mia. You just lost your way, but you can start over, unfiltered." Mia smiled, but her eyes were full of tears. "No filters," she repeated. "It sounds like his book." "Maybe this is your book," Caitlin said. "You just haven't written it yet." Mia looked out the window, where Los Angeles sparkled as always. The city was unforgiving, but it did offer second chances. She didn't know what her future would look like, but for the first time in a year, she felt ready to try. Not for her followers, not for the brands, but for herself. Ethan stood on a stage in San Francisco in front of 1,000 people. His voice was firm, but there was a new note in it, not of anger, but of hope. "The truth isn't always pretty," he said, "but it's the only thing that sets us free. I lost a lot to learn that, but I don't regret it, because without the truth, there's no way forward." The crowd applauded, but Ethan was looking beyond the spotlight. He was thinking about Mia and how maybe one day they could talk. Not as hash couple goals, but as two people who had made mistakes but wanted to be better. He didn't know if that was possible, but he knew that the truth was the first step. We don't just talk, we fight. Against indifference, lies, and betrayal. If you are true to yourself, your convictions, your truth join. Sign up. Like and be among those who do not remain silent when others turn away. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.